Before you die, there are places you must stand inside if you can. Rooms where civilizations are cracked open, where revolutions in color, faith, war, and beauty were born. This is not your everyday travel video. It's a countdown of the museums that changed the world and that can change you. I'm taking you to the 5 museums that you must see before you die. Inside these 5 museums are the moments that define us. Revolutions, religions, empires, and masterpieces that changed what it means to be alive. It's not just art, it's everything we've fought for, built, believed in, or dreamed of. I've ranked these world museums and I will show you the top works in each of them. Prepare to be spellbound and looking for plane tickets. Number 1, the Louvre in Paris, France. Located in the heart of the City of Lights, the Louvre is the world's largest and most famous art museum. It holds around 500,000 objects in total and displays about 35,000 works of art in its regular exhibits. It welcomes almost 10 million visitors every year, making it the most visited museum globally. Its scope is encyclopedic, covering almost the entire history of human art from ancient civilizations through mid-19th century Europe. The Louvre does not collect modern art, though. That's what the Musée d'Orsay and the Centre Pompidou are for. Now I'm going to take you through some of its most famous and unmissable works. The first one is called Liberty Leading the People by Eugène Delacroix. There are paintings that hang quietly on walls, and then there are paintings that erupt. Liberty Leading the People doesn't wait for you to approach it. It leaps out at you. When you finally turn into the gallery and see it, the scale hits you before the meaning does. Delacroix is painting freedom, not as an idea, but as a woman charging straight toward you, barefoot with her dress torn, exposed not for shock value, but because she's human and real and vulnerable, and she's still moving forward. What makes this painting so powerful is that it's not clean, heroic propaganda. If you look closer, there's bodies everywhere. Rebels, soldiers, rich, poor. Delacroix wants you to feel that revolutions are messy and chaotic and terrifying. But liberty doesn't glide above it. She steps into the mud and into the grit with everyone else, so she's not a goddess. She's one of the regular people. And you also see the flag, that tricolor, red, white, and blue, slashing across the smoke-filled sky like the very concept of freedom ripping open the clouds. This was painted after the July Revolution of 1830, which toppled the king, Charles X. But Delacroix also painted it knowing it would outgrow a specific event. So it's not about one year, 1830. It's about every moment and every time that society fractures and remakes itself. Stand close and you'll see the brushwork. It's wild, it's almost violent. He wasn't documenting a revolution. He was participating in one right there on the canvas, in person. It feels like the colors are drying right in front of you. Still unstable, still dangerous. When you leave the room, the painting stays with you. Not just because it's famous, but because it feels like liberty is still marching somewhere in the Louvre, still raising that flag, and still daring you to follow. Number 2, you knew it, The Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. So let's talk about the Mona Lisa, a painting that is somehow both the most famous artwork on the planet and probably the most misunderstood. People go to the Louvre expecting to see something enormous, but the first shock is how small the painting is. But the size is intentional. It's meant to kind of pull you in. It forces intimacy, which is kind of funny because you're usually standing in a crowd full of like 200, 300 people. It's the least intimate that you could be, but you're all trying to be intimate at the same time. But if you give yourself 10 seconds of real stillness and let the noise somehow drop away and clear your mind, here's the magic. Leonardo wasn't really painting a person, he was painting perception in and of itself. He layers translucent strokes, and it's a technique that's called sfumato, so that the edges of each line really seem to melt into the air, and that's why her smile seems to shift a bit. Your brain keeps trying to define the outline of her mouth, but since there's no clear outline, it creates emotion and movement and brings it to life. There's the background also, which is revolutionary. It's this dreamlike world of impossible bridges, misty valleys, and mountains that fade into hues that Leonardo invented centuries before color theory. It's not a real place, of course. It's a landscape of the mind, this kind of flowing, unstable, reforming thing. Notice how the horizon on the left is slightly lower than the one on the right. Leonardo did that on purpose. It gives an almost supernatural equilibrium, like she exists in a dimension where perspective bends around her. Even the pose is really revolutionary. It's the three-quarter turn. Now it's standard in portrait photography, but it was really new, like mind-blowing at the time. So she's not stiff, she's not formal, she's engaged with you, she's present, she's a real person. She's not a symbol or prop. So, as far as her eyes, well, they don't follow you around the room because of a trick. They follow you because Leonardo mastered shadow so precisely that your brain is filling in movement where none exists. When you finally step away from the painting, if you can have a moment to yourself with it in your mind somehow, maybe it's even just here watching this video, you realize why people make the pilgrimage. It's for many people, it's just bragging rights or the Instagram shot, but for some, it's more than that. Some, it's not just a souvenir, because the moment will get you to see the world that the genius Leonardo saw it. It was a revolution in art. It was a revolutionary time called the Renaissance, the rebirth. But it was a new birth. It had old ideas and concepts, and it was new and fresh at the same time, softening the edges around all of Europe and creating, in many ways, the world as we know it today. Number 3 is one of the few sculptures in this survey of the best museums in the world. It's the last one before we move on to the next great museum that you must see before you die. It's called the Winged Victory of Samothrace. So the Winged Victory doesn't just stand in the Louvre at the top of a stairway in the middle of the museum. It just commands it. And it's done that since it was created. You kind of ascend toward it up the stairs. It's not anywhere near as crowded as the Mona Lisa. The ancient Greeks originally placed this masterpiece on the prow of a ship overlooking a sanctuary. It was a stone ship. It was a votive offering, but it was meant to symbolize victory. The Louvre recreates that reveal perfectly. Every step adds a little more anticipation until suddenly she appears there for you, a goddess caught mid-landing. She's headless, armless, and missing some of her body, and still she radiates more motion than most sculptures ever attempt. The drapery is incredible. It's because it's Hellenistic art. This is one of the most recognizable aspects of Hellenistic art, and it's one of the best examples right here. It doesn't just sit on her. It kind of attacks her. Well, the wind is attacking it, and it's attacking her. It's whipping up in a frenzy. The fabric's going backward as if she just descended onto a ship that's slicing through the open sea. You can almost hear the crash of the waves, but the way it's carved in marble is so delicate that it almost seems like silk. The sculpture dates from around 190 BC, and it was created to celebrate a naval victory, but its symbolism has grown far beyond that. She's not about war, she's about momentum. And here's the part that not all visitors focus on, but are the most wonderful thing carrying the whole sculpture, and it's her wings. Even damaged, they arc outward with a kind of divine authority, not decorative or ornamental. They're engines, the physical manifestation of life force itself. You can go almost all the way around the sculpture, and if you look at the back, you can see that the back is just as detailed as the front. That means that the ancient viewers could walk around her almost the same way that you can do today. And they didn't see it as just an object, they would have seen it as a presence. It is a truly impeccable moment in art history and world history. The second museum that you must see before you die is just across the channel from France to England. It is the British Museum. The British Museum is located in the Bloomsbury neighborhood in the center of London. It's one of the largest and most ambitious museums ever created. It gets about 6 to 7 million visitors every year, making it, with the Louvre, one of the most visited museums on Earth, and with good reason. It holds millions and millions of objects spanning so much of human history, all the way from the Stone Age until even some objects from the present. Its strength are the ancient civilizations and great civilizations of the world, mainly in sculpture and in artifacts, going all the way up until the medieval times and further. And it includes everything that you could imagine as far as art, except it doesn't have a huge painting collection. That's where you move over down the street, basically, to the National Gallery in London, which is coming up very soon. But let's focus on the best ancient civilizations and sculpture museum in the world, the British Museum. I can only give you a taste because this museum is so vast and incredible. The most famous thing, and probably the most world-changing thing in the museum, it is going to be completely surrounded, almost like the Mona Lisa. It's called the Rosetta Stone. If the British Museum has a single object that changed all the course of human understanding, this single object would be it. So even if you don't have much time in London, at least run in and see this. And check out some of the beautiful Egyptian statues that are really basically right next to it. But anyway, I'm diverging. You don't just look at the Rosetta Stone. What you're witnessing is a code that's being cracked across time. The stone itself is surprisingly modest, although it's almost kind of the size of a human. It's a dark slab of granodiorite, broken all around the edges, a lot of the bottom part missing entirely. But what survives is the key to a world. There are 3 scripts on it: hieroglyphic, demotic, and ancient Greece, and they all are carrying the same message. It's a decree from 196 BC, a routine political document, something that basically should have been forgotten. But because it was carved 3 times, scholars suddenly had a multilingual dictionary between the living world and a civilization that had fallen silent for nearly 2,000 years. Because of this, we were able to understand Egyptian hieroglyphics. Slow down if you can, even if it's just here with me, and look at the texture. Carved lines worn from centuries of touch and weather. This stone has traveled. It was carried by priests, rediscovered by soldiers, and still fought over, by empires. It holds the fingerprints of history. And then there's that moment in 1822 when Jean-François Champollion realized the hieroglyphs weren't symbolic mysticism, that they were a writing system and phonetic and structured. And he shouted, "Je tiens l'affaire, I've got it." That moment, sparked by this stone, reopened an entire civilization. Temples, tombs, rituals, kings, all suddenly readable and maybe relatable. The Rosetta Stone is one of the most important artifacts in the history of the world. It's going to be in your civilization textbook the minute you open it. It's our gateway, a decoder ring, and it's standing right in front of you here at this great museum. You feel the weight of that breakthrough the language of the pharaohs. It was really hard narrowing down what to highlight for you in the British Museum because it's such a fantastic museum and such a great experience. But I wanted to show you how vast the collection is. It is the best place in the world to go to look at ancient civilizations of the West, like Mesopotamia, because of course, the Assyrian lion hunt, which I didn't even have time to go into in this video, the great Egyptian collection with mummies and statues and all of that. But it also has one of the most beautiful North American artifacts I've ever seen, the Aztec double-headed serpent. Now, another one of my favorite museums in the world didn't quite make this list, but it's amazing, and it's the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City. I get breathless even thinking about it. But this object here at the British Museum, if it were taken back to Mexico, would be one of the most beautiful things in the entire museum. So let's take a really beautiful look for a few moments at this Aztec double-headed serpent. Don't miss this if you go to the British Museum. This double-headed serpent is so colorful and so beautiful that it glows like something that's alive. Two gaping serpent mouths facing in different directions, but the real shock comes when you notice the surface. It's an entire mosaic of turquoise and other tiles. Over 2,000 tiny pieces, each cut and placed with obsessive precision, shimmering like scales when the light hits them. To the Aztecs in central Mexico, in what is now the largest city in North America, Mexico City, one of the most amazing cities, to the Aztecs, this wasn't just a decoration, it was power, it was sacred. The serpent itself was not merely an animal, it was a bridge to another world, a creature that connects us with the divine, and the double head represents duality, probably life and death, creation and, the opposite, destruction, the cyclical nature of the cosmos. Of course, we don't know exactly where this would have been for most of its life, but it was not meant to sit in a museum cabinet, so let it go elsewhere in your imagination. It likely adorned maybe a priest's costume or hung in a temple where firelight made it flicker in the cool Mexico City air. Imagine the blue glow in the darkness in a world with no screens, mostly green plants and brown terrain. A living symbol of gods watching over ceremonies of blood, water, sacrifice, renewal. The British Museum is full of masterpieces, but very few objects pulse the way this one does. It's absolutely enchanting. The last thing I'm going to talk about at the British Museum is absolutely the best: the Parthenon sculptures. One of the greatest achievements in the entire history of art are these Parthenon marbles, the companion to the Parthenon marbles in the Acropolis Museum in Athens. These friezes, metopes, and sculptures from the pediments are from the Acropolis itself. This is Greek history come to life here in London, where you can see it for free. When you enter the gallery, the first thing you feel is the scale. These aren't quote-unquote statues. They're fragments of an ancient cosmic drama carved for the most sacred temple of classical Greece, the Parthenon, and dedicated to the patron goddess of Athens, Athena. Look at the frieze. These are panels showing a festival procession. Horses are straining, riders leaning forward, muscles carved with anatomical perfection. Even in damaged form, the movement is so natural that you feel the parade passing by you. Look at the incredible metopes. Now, metopes are just like friezes, but they're separated by little 3-bar blocks called triglyphs. These are scenes of battle. Centaurs grappling with lapiths in one of art's most intense struggles ever. Marble freezes them in mid-motion, but somehow they still look like they might spring to life and jump right at you. The most incredible part are the pediment figures at both ends of this gallery, which is one of the greatest galleries of art anywhere in the world. The British Museum is so incredibly exciting. The pediment were those triangular shapes at the top of the Parthenon temple, and they had to fit sculptures inside those triangles. It's really incredible. What you got to see on those pediment figures were reclining gods and goddesses who once watched over the entrance to Athens. Even with missing heads and limbs, they radiate serenity and power. The sculptors understood fabric with a supernatural touch. Stone carved so thin it behaves like wet cloth clinging to their divine bodies. The Parthenon is the Greek worldview in stone. Harmony, proportion, balance, and the pursuit of beauty as a form of truth. Standing among these sculptures today, which you can only do really in two places on Earth, the Acropolis Museum in Athens itself, and here at the British Museum in London for free. Standing here, you feel the awe for the mastery of the ancient craftspeople and the enormity of the cultural story these objects represent. Number 3, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. It is really, really difficult to make a ranked and rated list of the top 5 museums that you must see before you die. Almost everybody would put the Louvre at the top because it has the greatest hits and it's a fantastic encyclopedic museum. The British Museum is extremely important and it has the greatest collection of foundational ancient civilizations in the world. But the Met is actually unique, and some would argue that it is not just the greatest museum in the United States, but that it's the greatest museum in the world. And I'll tell you why. The reason is because it is the king of encyclopedic museums. Remember I said that the Louvre is an encyclopedic museum, but the Met actually does an even better job of being truly encyclopedic. The quality of each of its departments is wonderful, even though it might not have as many greatest hits as the Louvre. But what it does that the Louvre doesn't do is that it actually starts sooner. It has more high-quality prehistoric items. But the main reason that it exceeds the Louvre as the king of encyclopedic museums is because it goes further. The Louvre stops and lets other museums take over, like the Musée d'Orsay and the Centre Pompidou for modern art, even for art from Impressionism. It's not included at the Louvre. But if you go to the Met, it just doesn't stop. It includes all of the genres of art that they have at the Musée d'Orsay. It includes realism and romanticism, and then it also hits you with some fantastic works of Impressionism, several Van Goghs and Monets, and it keeps going into modern art. The Met rises along the edge of Central Park in New York City, one of the most beautiful neighborhoods, the Upper East Side. Each year it sees 5 to 7 million visitors pass through its great hall. I'm only going to give you a brief touch of what it has to get you excited. The first harkens back to the foundations of Western civilization, the death of Socrates by the French artist Jacques-Louis David. You see how we're all connected here? When you stand in front of Jacques-Louis David's The Death of Socrates, you're not just witnessing a historical moment from ancient Greece. You're watching our greatest philosophy become flesh. This is a painting where every gesture and every shadow and every line of drapery carries the weight of the ideas that shaped Western thought. The scene is set in a stark Athenian prison. Socrates, who is condemned for quote-unquote corrupting the youth and refusing to abandon his principles, reaches calmly for a cup of poisonous hemlock. But the look on his face? Stoic. There's no fear, no trembling. He's even still lecturing. Even in the moment of his death, he's teaching us, even today. The real emotional punch comes from everyone else in the room, just like the Last Supper teaches us. His friends are collapsing under grief, heads are buried, arms limp, bodies twisted in despair. Socrates is the only vertical line, it's very important, in the room full of broken shapes. David uses geometry to tell the story. Even the lines of the bed frame, the outstretched arm, they lead your eye directly to that cup of poison. Everything converges. Then there's the color. Ooh, neoclassicism. Just like the greatest paintings that you'll see coming alive at the Louvre, here we see the red of Plato's robes sitting at the foot of the bed, quiet reminder of his future. This painting is the best of what art and art history can do. It's Enlightenment art, masquerading as ancient history, combining the two to make a political statement about resisting tyranny, disguised as a story from 399 BC. So standing in front of it at the Met, you feel the electrical tension of someone choosing death over dishonor. This is the theme that reverberates through every great religion, every great philosophy, and connects all of the strands of Western thought. For any of you who have had the wonderful opportunity to enjoy Ken Burns' recent documentary about the American Revolution, you will know number 2. This is Washington Crossing the Delaware by Emanuel Leutze. This is in the American wing at the Met. And remember that the Met actually has the greatest collection of American art in the entire country, and of course the world. Few images of American history are as instantly recognizable as this one, or as dramatically exaggerated, but that's part of the fun. But accuracy isn't the point here. It's heroism, it's patriotism. This was a message piece, and it's so big, so cool to see that you can tell that it's designed to overwhelm you. Washington stands at the prow of the boat, impossibly upright, bathed in that winter dawn light that breaks through this icy fog, calm and resolute. The eye of a storm made of ice, water, and impending battle. This was the middle of the revolution. Everything was uncertain. But the coolest thing about the picture is that if you look closely, the real story is the crew around him. So diverse that it represents what we want to believe, and we do believe at our highest form of the United States, of our country. Farmers, soldiers, immigrants, people from different backgrounds, different religions, rowing together to a common cause. He wasn't just painting the past, he was idealizing America and trying to dig into this and reignite the spirit of it. The ice floes are jagged, almost theatrical. The river looks more like a battlefield than water itself. So we get to see a battle without seeing the battle. It's playing with all of this in our minds. The irony is that Leutze didn't even paint this in America. He painted it in Germany as a message to Europeans fighting for their own freedom. But that speaks to the transcendence of art. At the Met, when you stand in front of it, you're dwarfed by it, and you realize that every inch of the canvas is crafted to make you feel. You feel the stakes of the cold, and you feel the determination, and hopefully you can feel some of that unity of spirit. The third piece that I want to show you at the Met is Van Gogh's Sunflowers. Van Gogh has many paintings of sunflowers. They are all beautiful, they are all famous, but this one is actually my favorite. It seems to be the only one that is kind of aligned this way, almost horizontally, and the only one that has this kind of a contrast between the yellows and the blues. I love it so much. To me, it might be the closest thing a painting has to a heartbeat. So remember that the Met is filled with masterpieces from every era. It doesn't stop like the Louvre does around the mid-1800s. It keeps going into Impressionism. It even has a modern wing. But this, of course, is post-Impressionism with Van Gogh. At first glance, it's a very simple painting, this yellow world. But if you stand here longer, you realize that they aren't even one color. There are dozens of colors layered in thick strokes that rise off of the canvas better than with anybody else. Because this is after photography was invented, because this was after realism and neoclassicism, Van Gogh isn't just painting flowers, he's painting light, yes, but he's mainly painting feeling and emotion. Just look at the outlines, if you can even call them that. They're not sharp, they're almost in relief coming out at you, but they're not delineated as much as they are vibrating. At times you can almost feel the motion of Van Gogh's hand. And like all of the things Van Gogh touched, including his own ear, there's tension and pain and tumult here, a kind of luminous sadness. At the Met, it's a little bit different than MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, which is one of the greatest museums in New York City. Didn't quite make this list, but it's wonderful. That has The Starry Night by Van Gogh. It's going to be really crowded. There are so many Van Goghs here in the Met, most people don't even associate Van Gogh with the Met. So the great thing here is that if you come to the Met to look at the sunflowers, you're going to have some moments to yourself. You'll notice the tension here, that luminous sadness that I talked about. You're able to linger in front of this painting longer than almost any other Van Gogh you'll ever see. So absorb it, either there or here, for a few more moments. Lastly, I could not get away without talking about the part of the Met that everyone talks about when they leave the Met. It's world famous. It connects the United States all the way back to Egypt because it is the Temple of Dendur. Again, if the Met has a showstopper, this is what they're going to be talking about. But it isn't a gallery. It's a whole atmosphere and a vibe. You're stepping into a vast, sunlit hall, remember, right alongside Central Park, and suddenly you're standing before an actual Egyptian temple from 15 BC, built under the Roman Emperor Augustus and dedicated to Isis. Sandstone walls rise in perfect proportion. Carvings of ancient gods still cling to the surfaces. The doorway frames the light in a way that feels designed for eternity. But the real magic is the setting. The room is designed to mimic the Nile. A reflecting pool stretches along the temple, catching the natural light that pours in from the enormous glass wall. The sky of New York City becomes part of an ancient experience. At sunset, the room turns gold. At night, it becomes a quiet, glowing chamber of embers. No other museum on Earth displays ancient architecture quite like this. Walk around the temple and you'll see ancient graffiti, Roman soldiers, 19th century explorers even scratched their name across time. This building has lived very many lives. The US received this as a gift after helping save Egyptian monuments from flooding during the construction of the Aswan High Dam. And now the Met, the greatest museum in America, and some say the world, has become its permanent home. A strange but beautiful act of cultural diplomacy, now for everybody to see, right here in Manhattan. Number 4 on the list of 5 museums that you must see in your lifetime is the National Gallery in London, United Kingdom. This is basically the twin sibling of the British Museum, also down the street, basically in London. And I always say if you put the National Gallery and the British Museum together into one, they would probably be a greater museum than the Met or even the Louvre. Standing at the top of Trafalgar Square in the heart of London, the National Gallery is the world's greatest temple of European painting. Each year, more than 5 million visitors step inside its neoclassical facade to encounter a collection of over 2,300 paintings, a tightly curated survey of Western art from the 1200s to the 1900s. What makes the National Gallery remarkable isn't its size, but its concentration of painting masterpieces. This is where you come to see the highlights of 7 centuries of European painting. Van Eyck and Botticelli, Leonardo and Raphael, Titian and Caravaggio, Velázquez and Rembrandt, Turner, Constable, and even Monet and Van Gogh. Every gallery feels like a greatest hits playlist of art history. So the National Gallery is the perfect crash course, an essential pilgrimage for anyone who wants to see the story of European art told through its absolute finest moments. Leonardo da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks doesn't just depict a biblical scene here at the National Gallery. It creates a whole world. A world of shadow, stone, and that impossible softness. This painting is a masterclass in atmosphere. You don't just look at it, but you actually enter it. This is England's answer to the Mona Lisa, and in my opinion, it absolutely does not disappoint. The setting here is a cavern, but not really a dark one. It feels kind of like a cathedral carved by nature. The dripping rock, watery pools, misty air. These are hard things to depict. This is Leonardo da Vinci's obsession with geology and science woven into religious imagery. He wanted the divine to feel rooted in the physical world. And then there's the composition itself, this perfect triangle formed by the Virgin, the Christ child, the infant John the Baptist, and an angel. Leonardo is using that sfumato technique here again. Remember, you saw that in the Mona Lisa at the Louvre. Those smoky, feathered edges to blend forms into the air. Nothing has a hard outline. Everything breathes. But the real magic is the light. It doesn't shine from above or from a torch. It just seems to emanate from within the figures themselves. Few paintings in the Western art canon have been argued about, analyzed, and debated as endlessly as Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini portrait here at the National Gallery. This is the most famous and most important painting probably in the entire National Gallery, and definitely in the Northern Renaissance style. Remember, the Mona Lisa and Leonardo da Vinci was the Southern Renaissance. This is the Northern Renaissance that most people don't know as much about, but it is incredibly important and stunning in its own way. Standing in front of the Arnolfini portrait, you understand why. It's one of the most enigmatic images that's ever created. It's like a Renaissance riddle wrapped up in oil paint. So, at first glance, it's just simply a domestic scene. Of course, that's deceptive, but you see a wealthy couple in a bedroom holding hands. But nothing in this painting is really simple. The man raises his hand as if making an oath. What's the oath? The woman stands in serene dignity. Their clothes, drip of wealth, velvet, fur, silk, but it's rendered with microscopic precision. Then your eye finds the convex mirror on the back wall, and the entire painting opens up like a puzzle. In its curved reflection, you see two more figures entering the room. You can see that in that mirror. One of them is possibly Van Eyck himself. Above the mirror, in flawless calligraphy, he wrote, "Jan van Eyck was here." Not Jan van Eyck painted this. He was here. A signature as an actual event. The symbolism also floods in. The single candle burning in the chandelier. The dog symbolizing loyalty. The fruit on the windowsill symbolizing wealth, elegance, luxury, maybe temptation. The shoes removed on sacred ground. Is this a marriage? Is this a legal contract? Is this a memorial portrait? Historians still argue. But what they all agree on is this. No one before Van Eyck had ever used oil paint with such precision, depth, and radiance. Seeing it in person feels like witnessing the birth of realism itself. J.M.W. Turner's The Fighting Temeraire is so much more than just a painting. It's a grand farewell, not just to a ship, but to an entire era. It's also arguably the most famous British painting ever. The Temeraire was a hero of the Battle of Trafalgar. It was a wooden warship that once thundered across the seas. But in Turner's vision, it's being towed silently by a small steam tug toward the scrapyard. The old world pulled by the new. Look at the sky. This is what Turner is famous for in all of his paintings around the world. The setting sun stretches across the canvas in streaks of gold, rose, and fire. Turner paints the sky as if it's alive. The Temeraire itself is painted in pale, ghostly tones, almost transparent. Meanwhile, the steam tug, squat and industrial, belches smoke. This is dark, it's mechanical, modern. Turner's message is clear. The age of sail is dying. The age of steam is rising. No one painted light like Turner. That's another important thing here. Not then, not now. He was called the painter of light for a reason. And yet, despite the melancholy, the painting is also very peaceful. It's a tribute, not merely a lament. He gives it a final voyage worthy of legend. In 2005, the British public voted this the greatest painting in the country. And when you look at it here in the National Gallery, it's pretty easy to see why. For the last of these 5 museums that you must see once in your lifetime, we're going to go to the Vatican City. The Vatican Museums, a journey into the beating heart of Western art and spirituality. Located within the Vatican City, which is a sovereign state inside Rome, the Vatican Museums form one of the largest and most extraordinary museum complexes on Earth. Each year, more than 6 million visitors move through its labyrinth of galleries, courtyards, and corridors, an immense collection that stretches for miles and spans over 20,000 works on display. This is the visual legacy of 2 millennia of Catholic patronage. The Vatican's strength is its unparalleled breadth. Ancient Egyptian and Etruscan artifacts, Greek and Roman sculpture, Renaissance and Baroque masterpieces, tapestries, exquisite maps, and some of the most important religious art ever created. And at the heart of it all, the Sistine Chapel, a great place to begin the end of this video, where Michelangelo's ceiling and his Last Judgment stand as some of the most influential and awe-inspiring works in all of human history. There is no moment in any museum on Earth quite like stepping into the Sistine Chapel. You enter expecting a ceiling, and instead you walk into a vision, an exquisite worldview in art. An entire world suspended above you and around you, vibrating with color, tension, and absolutely divine ambition. Michelangelo didn't even want this job. He saw himself as a sculptor, not a painter. But when he accepted the commission, he approached it like a man possessed. 4 years. Standing on scaffolding, he built himself with paint dripping in his eyes, his body breaking under the strain, and yet he ended up creating one of the greatest masterpieces in human history. An illusionary structure holds 9 central scenes from the book of Genesis: creation, fall, flood, and humanity's beginning. The narrative's ancient, but the emotion, the Renaissance emotion, is shockingly human. And then that moment, that one image that everyone knows, the creation of Adam. Adam, limp and waiting. God, hurtling through the sky, wrapped in a whirlwind of angels, their fingers reaching toward each other in an electric stillness, a millimeter of space between them. That gap has become a symbol of the spark between the human and the divine. Standing beneath this ceiling, you can feel Michelangelo wrestling with creation itself. It's nothing less than cosmic. Walk a few galleries away and you step into a room that feels like the Renaissance imagining its own soul. Raphael's School of Athens. This painting is a manifesto of human knowledge. Raphael paints an impossible gathering, every great thinker of the ancient world assembled in one grand architectural hall. Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, Euclid, Socrates, all captured in mid-discussion, ideas flowing like a river. At the center, Plato points upward toward the world of forms, ideals, and metaphysics. Aristotle gestures horizontally toward the observable world, ethics and reality. 2 hands, 2 philosophies, shaping Western thought for centuries. Raphael places them like twin suns around which the entire composition orbits. Then your eyes start picking out other faces. Euclid crouched over a tablet, modeled after Leonardo da Vinci himself. Heraclitus, brooding alone, modeled after Michelangelo. Even Raphael includes himself in the crowd, looking out as if to say, I belong in this lineage too. Standing before the School of Athens is like standing inside the mind of the Renaissance, a civilization rediscovering knowledge, celebrating reason, and believing that humanity could reach higher. Optimism, carved in paint. Then you turn a corner and everything changes. A sculpture that stunned the Renaissance when it was unearthed in 1506. Laocoon and Sons. This is ancient drama frozen at its most brutal moment. Laocoon, a Trojan priest, punished by the gods for warning his people against the Greek horse. 2 serpents sent from the sea coil around him and his sons, dragging them into agony. Look at the faces, twisted in absolute terror, the muscles pulled to their breaking point, the marble carved so deeply it almost feels like flesh straining under pressure. This is not the calm idealism of classical Greece. This is the emotional, violent truth of Hellenistic art. When Michelangelo saw this sculpture being pulled from the ground, it changed him. You can trace the influence directly into the Sistine Chapel, the contorted bodies, the heroic torsos, the physical intensity. Even today, the energy is shocking. The sons cry out in desperation. Laocoon himself is trapped between defiance and doom, with every muscle flexed in a final struggle. The Vatican museums are where beauty, belief, brilliance, and human breaking points all converge. We saw the Louvre's unmatched heavy hitters. We went to the Met in New York for an encyclopedic journey across every era and every culture, and of America's finest art. We went to the National Gallery and took a luminous walk through the greatest European paintings ever made. We went down the street to the British Museum and saw the global story of humanity told through its most iconic artifacts. And lastly, we went to the Vatican museums in Rome for an unrivaled fusion of art, religion, and world-shaping history. You don't have to be an art expert to be moved by these places, these cathedrals of knowledge, history, and beauty. Stand in front of a painting that survived revolutions, or a sculpture carved before Christ, or a temple saved from the sands, and something happens. You feel the weight of time and your place in it, and that's what museums are for. If you visit none else in your lifetime, visit these. But this is just the beginning. Each one of these museums contains masterpieces so important, so shocking, so influential that they deserve their own deep dive. So if you want the essential top 10 things that you must see at each of these museums, no fluff, no filler, just the absolute best, click through to the next videos here on my channel, and let's go room by room. Your world tour is only getting started. And if you liked this video, give it a like and hit me with a comment letting me know which museum you liked the best. And click on my Great Museums playlist to let the magic begin.